Welcome everybody to the Seen&heard podcast, a conversational series. Today I have the great honour of speaking to Gary McFarlane. Gary is a relate-trained and experienced relationship counsellor, mediator, sex therapy, sex, porn, love addiction therapist. He provides support to impacted partners of sex addiction. He is an accredited EMDR therapist working with trauma, complex trauma, PTSD, panic attacks, anxiety, stress, body issues, dissociation and addictions, all undertaken by secure webcam with clients from all parts of the country and abroad. He is an accredited member of professional bodies, and he is a member of Stop So and a past solicitor. Gary has developed the Kairos Centre's own unique brand of sex, porn, love, addiction recovery program, giving priority to what happened to you back there in childhood development, rather than pointing clients first and foremost to a recovery program. The addiction is for self-soothing from something or some things, hence the use of EMDR to first address the trauma. He has created what may be the world's first fully comprehensive video-on-demand online webinar for sex, porn, love addiction, and recovery program, being used by many clients throughout the world. Singles and couples may also be interested in his video-on-demand relationship program to enhance aspects of their relationship. Gary, welcome.
It's a privilege to be here, Chris. Thanks so much for inviting me.
No, it's wonderful. We've been speaking for maybe 6 to 9 months now.
Yes.
One of the first therapists practitioners that we had onto our directory at Seen&heard in the early days when we were just getting started. And it's been I've really enjoyed our conversations along the way.
No, that's lovely. It's lovely to have got there because I just did not seem to be a right fit initially because I'm not so much a boarding school attender, but maybe we'll get into that as to how I end up working actually with a lot of boarding school attenders.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I think you challenged me really well on one of our first conversations because I perhaps got myself a little rigid in my mindset about certain sort of having to attend a boarding school or had undergone training, the boarding school syndrome training and things like that. But you've naturally come to work with so many boarders in your
Yes.
work, and your story is really amazing. So I can see, it was very helpful to have that challenge from you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, that's a bit of context of how we met, and it's been a great conversation since. But what really sparked me to want to do the podcast and ask if you'd be willing to come on is absolute fascination around sex, porn, love addiction on a very personal level, and with so many people that we see coming to Seen&heard and in my own coaching work. So really looking forward to getting into that today. But I always love to know on a podcast, who someone is, where they came from, what their story is. So, Gary, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what life was like for you when you were growing up, and we can get a flavour of how things were.
Well, dude, Chris, every time I lift my head up, I ask, how did I get here? And I just use how did this black man, whose wife is not going to see him naked, such was my shyness about all things sexual, end up becoming a sex therapist, sex, porn, love addiction, talking about sex all day. And I just look and how did I get here? Lawyer, one day, woke up, he's no longer the lawyer, he's the therapist. There's a journey. And I designed my life in a lovely packaged way. This is gonna achievements. It hasn't gone anything like the things I designed my life to be. So I always begin with when I first have a session with a client, I introduce them to themselves. This is the little black Gary, the little black baby, really. And in answer to your question, it's that I was born actually in Jamaica. And when I was 18, actually it was 16 months. It wasn't 18 months, 16 months old. My parents came to England to give us a better start in life, better quality of life, better education, etc. And so they left, and I was left in Jamaica with 2 older sisters. But I did not see my parents again until I was age nearly about 6, going on 7. And so some significant things happened that I had no idea about. I mean, what's the problem? They're the bravest of the bravest. In my 40s, I'm angry, Chris, with my mum. I'm seeing red, and I don't get it because I love my mum, love my dad. They're the bravest of the bravest. What on earth is going on? Why, when I go around to visit her, am I so angry at her and limiting the contact? And yet I want to, and yet I don't. And I couldn't understand the dynamics. And Chris, I really, the best way to put it is there's a Gary that I didn't know. And aunties, uncles, the extended family brought me up in Jamaica until I came to see my parents, these people. That's the best way I can describe them, these people. I didn't know there was a problem, Chris, but clearly this stuff in my 40s, when I'm now the lawyer, no longer enjoying being the lawyer, I'm a partner in a big law firm. What on earth is going on? Children in private education, big house. What's going on? I don't enjoy what I do. And what had happened is I started volunteering at Relate to train in relationship issues, singles and couples. And I was preferring the work with Relate than I was in the law firm. But the law firm was paying the bills and the private school but I'm waking up and this is drudgery, and yet I'm alive when I volunteer at Relate. There's a dichotomy. And so as I start to train in counselling through Relate, I realise there is this Gary that I don't really know. And the best way to describe it, Chris, the best way I describe it is using the Russian doll, really. Something had happened. And reading these books, Freud and all these others that I'm going away studying on the weekend, it was getting inside of me. And any of us that has done any counseling training know that before you can look to help others, there's something about you got to do that, and you got to do that, and you got to do that, and you got to go on a journey to find you, whether I wanted it or not, because of course I'm not that broken. But this stuff of books and Freud, it really was getting inside of me. So, Chris, I was on an unstoppable journey. And I have to tell you, it took out an 18-year marriage and 2 children. So this isn't small. It really was a pretty major event in my 40s. But it all started back there, really, which was the little boy. And clearly, and this is so relevant, really, as a part of what I call the attachment stuff, the insecure attachment. What is this? And how dare some person called John Bowlby try to put me in a box and tell me that if this happens to me when I'm young and this is going to show itself in adulthood, how dare you? And anyway, I'm a complex being made by God. I'm not like anybody else. And oh my goodness. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that description. That's not. Oh, actually, that's describing me. That's really was the stark in my face, Chris. And I didn't like it. And I have to tell you, going into therapy, I was, someone has talked about your fingernails scraping the carpet where I'm being pulled. I'm not doing this. I'm not sharing myself with some busybody third person, probably female, probably white, probably in their 50s or 60s or something. I'm not doing this. I don't want to do this. But I was hemorrhaging. The little baby me clearly knew there was somebody called a mother that I had begun to attach with in those 16, 18 months. And I, of course, had no knowledge of it, but I must have connected with her, my pupils, breast milk, because we know actually babies can identify the breast milk of a mother from hundreds of others. It's just really? Really? And touch. So all the 5 senses had actually bonded with her. And so when she left, I must have cried and cried and cried because I was tired. I pooed, and this person didn't come to change me, to feed me, to put me to sleep. And I would have cried, and of course, I have no knowledge whatsoever of this. But something had happened, and so she left, she's gone. So something has set something up inside of me where I began to learn, Chris, that, and this is all so unconscious, people, so totally, totally unconscious. But I learned to build a force field around me that I didn't understand. So, Chris, I'm at university and I'm a law student. I'm going to be eligible. And I was thinking, why have these other guys got girlfriends and I don't have a girlfriend? Why can't I have a girlfriend? I'm not that. I'm quite handsome, and some of those ugly guys, those ugly guys have got girlfriends. Why can't I? Had no idea that I'd built this force field around me where I don't share me with people. I certainly don't let my heart go to people. Chris, I had no idea about the dynamics of that. I call it my ready brick force field. Yeah. And so I didn't let people get near me or get close at all. And I didn't know that. Let me just pause there.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you for sharing it. Yeah, resonate really deeply with a couple of the things you said there. I mean, the abandonment side, it said it's sort of 16, 18 months, such a huge trauma, but
She didn't abandon me. She loves me. Of course she didn't. And it's terms like that I'm reading from Bowlby that I'm trying to... She didn't abandon me. She didn't reject me. It's not loss, and it's just... Yeah, but if you soften it a bit, actually she did leave. And Chris, you're quite right. It's just the words don't seem to fit.
Yeah, no, I really hear you. Someone who, my mum left, I think, when I was 2, and again when I was 4, and then sort of finally at 5.5, 6, when her and my dad divorced. I don't remember that, but likewise, I don't have a memory of her being there, and I think that's quite a thing. It's sort of a lot of the time it's it's not as an event, a traumatic event or memory. It's purely the absence. It's the absence of that connection, as you said, with your 5 senses. So really resonate deeply with that. Thank you for sharing it. And so when you came to England, then when you reconnected with mum and dad in England, did you say you were around 6 or?
Yeah, around 6. And again, you use those terms, which I can't identify with those terms Chris is using, abandonment. Yet they're exactly right, Chris. When you just said connected, well, the point is, I never connected back. I met these people, and my sister said that's a mum that I have no idea. Well, I had those back there. Aunties, grandparents, uncles. I didn't know they were called aunties, they were just people that looked after me. So coming to England, Chris, to these strangers, and I now begin to understand what a mum and a dad is, but because of their own conflict in relationship, I don't really want too much of that, and I never reattached to them, Chris, quite simply. And so they did. I lived really with the threat of separation and divorce. It felt like for most of my life growing up, Chris. And eventually around age 10, that question, which of course still stays with me, who would you like to live with when we separate? And the child is given that question to make a decision. And it's just, I mean, I'm now 63, nearly 64, and that still resonates with me. Who do you want to? I mean, that's trauma at its height. But I lived with domestic violence, and I was scared of my dad. I was the oldest boy, and 2 older sisters, then me, then a younger brother who was born over here. So sibling rivalry, because he felt closer to my mum than I was, which of course I envied. But I couldn't go to my parents and ask for anything. I got him to ask but there's all sorts of dynamics that was playing out there. But essentially, what had happened was this little Gary had created these layers and layers and layers. So if somebody said, stand up the real Gary, I don't know which is the real Gary, really. I don't know. Is it that one? So I knew I was on an unstoppable journey to try and find the real me, because the layers that I gave to people was this one. If you're new to my systems, this is the person. If you've been with me for a bit, I might get you. But few people ever got into see the real me. But the problem was, Chris, even I didn't know the real inner Gary. And those that understand what I'm saying can resonate with this. Every now and then I saw this little boy, even me as the adult, and I knew I could like you. Hey, I see you. You're nice, aren't you? You're a nice. Gone back in. And it's just, I know there is a nice guy in there. I need to find him. I want to find him. It's unstoppable. And that was so powerfully unstoppable, Chris, that despite the kicking and screaming, I had to go into therapy, because I then am going through a separation, and the divorce potentially is happening, which is nothing. This can't happen. This can't happen. And then I have this older son, son who is getting close to 10. And oh my goodness, something I'd vowed never to happen, because of course, Chris, I'm not going to get married, because marriage is for those nice people over there. But no, that ain't coming near me, because I'll have female friends, but don't call them girlfriends, because girlfriends become fiancés, become wives. I ain't getting married anyway, because, and unconsciously, people you give your heart to leave you. And so, of course, I then experienced my parents divorcing. They got back together sometime later, Chris, and they divorced each other again. And then my dad married somebody else, and he divorced her, and he got back with her. Now all this is happening up to in my 20s. That's why this thing called marriage. And I'm actually a Christian as well, but now that ain't going near me. That's not. And so I'll have female friends and all. So Chris, this is really, I laugh at myself, because I created what I call my 10-point angel figure. Any future girlfriend, not wife, because no, not even girlfriend, sorry, I'm getting it all wrong. Female friend. You mustn't say girlfriend, because girlfriends could become fiancés. But no, that ain't. So any female friend must have these 10 attributes. She must have, thank you, I don't remember what most of them are. But you see, that's my unconscious way of avoiding females getting close to me. We can go to the cinema, we can do things, but we can't, etc. So that was the dynamics going on for me, Chris. And when my boy was nearly 10 and I'm going through a separation, a divorce, it was the biggest nightmare in my life, that quite simply, I died. I literally did not want to live. I really wanted the car to crash, and I did not want to live. It was the most painful experience to see history repeating itself. How does that happen, Chris? Is it in the water or the tea? Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Gary, for your honesty and sharing. I think I resonate very deeply. And a long while ago, I saw a great podcast, one of Piers Cross's podcasts, about the mother wound.
Yeah.
And it unlocked a box for me in my therapy and my development journey as well, to really understand that. There's, mum left a lot when I was young, off to boarding school at 7. When I finally came back from boarding school at 13, she died within a year of a brain tumor.
Wow.
And so many of those sort of abandonments by the feminine, if you like, not just the mother, but in boarding school, the lack of femininity that was allowed, either from men, from women, the kind of shutting down of anything that was any kind of appropriate touch, any connection. And it had been so absent in my life that, as you say, when you get into your 20s, for me, it showed up in a very similar way, in that I couldn't relate, in a romantic way to women, to girls, women at all. They were kind of held up on a pedestal,
Yeah.
sort of slightly far away from me, but they were kind of untouchable, unreachable, and so was the feminine part of me, the soft,
Oh,
kind, connective, nurturing part was long gone as well. So I really hear you. Yeah, really hear
no, I really get that. And I really want our listeners to hear this. It's never a criticism of our parents for me. And I say this to my clients, before you criticize your parents, what you must do is look at the parents that parented them. Because what you'll see is, and this my pen is my baton. I have to get it right. I've sometimes been counseling a lot of Americans, and I've been saying baton in the relay race, the athletics race, baton, and they had no idea what I was talking about until many sessions later. Oh, baton! But there's something in the relay race, Chris, of something that gets passed on down the generational line. So there's an intergenerational. So parents likely experience some stuff, including abandonment, somewhere back there. And we resolve as parents to do the very best for our children. That's the point we really need to hold on to. Mostly our parents endeavor to do the best that they can do. They don't really set out, most of them, to hurt. But the things that they've been handed, and they've tried to filter off the worst excesses and resolve this will not happen to my children. But the problem is they filtered off only so much, but there's still a whole heap of stuff that gets handed on to the children. So it's never a criticism of parents, but the fact is there are wounds that they're carrying, which get somehow passed on down the generational line as wounds to the children. And
you.
that's why I offer to my clients, let's look at those wounds.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Gary. It's so powerful to. I had to go through a lot of anger towards my parents in my therapeutic journey, but that's really healthy.
Yes.
To come back together, and my relationship with my dad's never been better. I've healed with my mum's spirit; she's no longer with us. But they don't have to be around for you to do the healing work. In fact, it's easier because they can't answer back.
That's, Chris, that's a powerful point
Yeah.
you just made as a off by the way, Chris, that's really powerful what you just said, because there's a lot of, certainly my clients, that are grieving because it's ended now, they've died. I can never get closure. That's not true. That is not true at all. There are different processes, but you can actually really healthily deal with a lot of those things you're carrying as unresolved because they're no longer alive. That's really powerful what you just said.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, it's definitely been very a very important part of my healing. I think that the one that really unlocked the mother stuff with dad, there was some basic anger, there was some sort of abandonment stuff. Particularly, he didn't want me to go to boarding school. Mum did. Mum won the argument. Off I went at 7. Dad would have rather had me at home. So I held some anger. Why didn't you fight for me? Why weren't you there for me? That resolved relatively quickly in the therapeutic process. But the mum stuff only came when I started to find my inner feminine,
Yes.
to identify it, to meet
Yeah.
it, to start to listen to it, and then suddenly mum made sense. And what mum had done was, through a great act of love, because she was really unwell, felt that she put me somewhere safe, and that was
Yeah.
boarding school. And suddenly my heart was open. She didn't know any better,
At all. At all.
she did her very best, and so now she lives with me in my heart, my head, and we talk most days. But yeah,
That's beautiful.
it's important what you've brought up about that.
I mean, just so much coming out of your story. I mean, just one of those things, which is, well, just the unconscious big boys don't cry. And of course, if big boys don't cry, then the adult man can't cry. And yet those emotions are proper emotion. So we're not really allowed to properly own anger. So, Chris, what happens is the unresolved, on the inability to express those emotions get locked into the body.
Mm.
Now, you can't call those events trauma, can you? Well, I do, because I say to people that trauma isn't what's happening between Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. Trauma is the 6-year-old whose Action Man or the little girl whose whatever the toy is taken by the little girl, the little boy down the road. And when you go to get it at their house, a father opens the door and then slams the door in your face saying, it's not yours, it's my child's. And your child, your parents, your dad doesn't go and rescue it. And you're telling me about that 30 odd years, 40 odd years later in the therapy room. That was trauma, and it got locked into the body. And so what Bessel van der Kolk is saying, we remember trauma less in words and more very much, it's locked in the body. And there is actually a way to find a way to get it out, and the key thing also that you were saying is the mother, Chris, is really significant. But I need people to keep hearing that it's not a criticism, but mother is different to a father. And it's not a sex, it's just the fact that this baby Chris, this baby Gary, was in her tummy for 9 months-ish before he came out. So actually, people, the bonding, the stuff, or the not bonding was happening during that 9-month period in utero before baby even came out. So the stuff of what's going on in mom's life with whoever partners are is going through to the baby in the umbilical or whatever the thing. It is impacting the baby. So a lot of the work I do with the MDR, the baby actually can do a journey through the womb to start to do some healing because of the trauma that happens. So it is the case that really that significant attachment point is going to be a mother. It's not taken away from the masculine. Hey, dad is, or now I don't want to get into the complexities of sexes and etc. But that mother figure is significant, and that other maleness for role modeling is also really significant as well.
Yeah, thank you. You touched on a couple of things there, Gary, which so important for anyone listening, and sort of really saved the day in my recovery. Like you, I just didn't want to be here 4 years ago. It was too much to break down, and the body work. So sort of Bessel van der Kolk, body keeps the score. Whether it's EMDR or I practice emotional freedom technique or somatic experiencing, or whatever it is, so powerful, the body stuff. You also referenced the inner child part. So getting back to the womb, to some of the work I do with clients, we're back to past lives and ancestors, and
absolutely,
you've got to follow. You said before, don't look at your parents, look at their parents, and start to draw these lines of what's baked into us, nature, nurture. So really fascinating. Thank you for those key points.
And the brain and the body will lead us. That sounds odd. What do you mean by that, Gary? If we're willing to be a little bit vulnerable, just get these clever club therapists out of the way, because the body really does know how to heal us. The brain knows what to do. In the hands of some skilled therapists, it's not really it's the skilled therapist, yes, but in the hands of a skilled therapist, your body, the somatic, as you say, and really the brain can heal the stuff of 50, 60, 70 years ago, 5 years ago. It can, using one of the different processes. And it just so happens one of them that I use is EMDR, but the somatic and various others, wow.
Yeah, some good stuff. It's never too late, I think, with healing. And so many times in my own journey with others I've spoken to, they've sort of written themselves off. They feel there's no way back. Like you say, they're trying to heal with someone who's no longer around. There is always a way to do it energetically with the body. Thank you, Gary, because I think that's important for people to hear. But I'd love to, just segue a little bit for your own journey then. So you mentioned, because we want to talk about sex, love, and porn addiction. So it's a real specialism for you, and it's a really great topic. You mentioned that as you came out into your 20s, a female friend could become a girlfriend, could become a fiancée, could become a wife. So you were holding things at bay. Obviously you've talked about your mum and the attachment side of things. How then did you move in your sex, porn, and love journey? How did that take you on your personal side through to the work that you now do as a specialist in that area?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chris. The dichotomy, if I put my hands like this to fit it in the camera, is the lawyer, but somebody who was really interested in helping people, counseling as well. But they were both helping people. But coming up through youth clubs, maybe churches, whatever, talking to people was naturally me. So one paid the bills, the other didn't, but I enjoyed the one that didn't more. So I go on this journey to start to volunteer at Relate. All I knew was I wanted to become one of these things called a sexologist. I don't know what that is, but I just sounded, and the work of talking, because as a youth, sort of helping young people, I just enjoyed talking about sex, which was bizarre for somebody growing up in my family where there's some kissing on the television and it's just, what are they doing? Ooh, turn the channel over. And that, of course, set up my view of the human body, nakedness, nudity, and you don't let your parents know that you've seen something. So a torn up nudie magazine in the park when we're playing football. And oh my goodness, what was that? What is that? Because the best for me was the library. And because there was no sex education from my parents at all, and when your body is doing stuff and it's changing and you need to know, the brain is saying, I need to understand that. I go off to the library, of course. And now you're looking at the biology books and there's images and pictures of biology, but it's sexual reproduction. And so how do I get this book to the desk and get it stamped? It's just biology, Gary. It's just, yeah, but as a 10, 11-year-old, it's not. So that's my journey, really. And then coming across the images of, at the time it was magazines, not the internet, that nudie magazine, as we called it. And then as boys, we hid it. And to go back and look at it is just, and the strangest thing, Chris, I still remember the excitement, but I didn't go on to have a sex porn addiction. And I don't know how and why. Probably maybe my Christian faith, because etc. I don't know, but I didn't. And so my journey is more, I want to help people. And as the lawyer, clinical negligence, quite specialist, acting for NHS Trust, then changing side track for the patients, I was helping win in tens of thousands, even £1 million of compensation for people. But that wasn't giving me the satisfaction somehow. And then over here, the human element of being able to see that this couple coming at Relate, possibly divorce or whatever, and they've got children, I realize, I guess, and again, it feels so unconscious because I can't even remember myself thinking this way, but there's money to try and make the pain of the operation that went wrong that I've helped to win for you. That's great. Thank you, Gary. Really appreciate your work as a solicitor. But then over here, the couple whose relationship, and somehow I could make a small impact into that. That human element made a significant difference to me, Chris. So I train in relationship, and that was just an obstacle course, really, Chris, to get to the sex therapy. Again, I don't know how that came about for me to be interested in talking about sex. But hey, Gary, before you become a sex therapist, you've actually got to train as a counselor. Oh, really? Oh, all right, then let's do that. And so I do that for a number of years, go on to do the training in sex therapy. It just was such a natural adjunct to working with sex, working with couples. So each one really, working with singles, working with couples. But you can't just work with a couple because the casualty, sex is always the first casualty when there's conflict. But we're very English, and I can call myself very English because I've been over here for over 50 odd years, and sex is just not. But now let's talk about it. How's sex going for you guys? Oh, Gary. And it's just, Gary, you may need to tone it down a bit because people talk about what you do in the bedroom, and now let's just talk about sex. So I'm much more open and willing. I do calm it down a bit because I realize they're not in the same place as you, Gary, talking about sex all day. So I do change the language, and we but the sex side. But people aren't going to offer you sex until they realize it's a topic you're comfortable with. So I feel my way until I've built a good therapeutic alliance with the clients, and I can go in and say, hey, tell me about sex before you go. Yeah, and I do it in a nice way. But then, of course, coming out of the sex, the casualty of sex and the porn, Chris, really what I'm doing is doing a stepping stone that just said they were just natural adjunct to being added for the wholeness of the person in front of me. And I really wanted to help that couple and that individual to be the best that they can be during our short life here on planet Earth. And that's really lovely, Gary, but that's the truth of it. The helping profession, I just want to help people in my interview as a trainee solicitor. And actually it's the same with therapy. I just want to leave a lasting legacy in people's lives, as many as possible. Is that arrogant? Don't think so. And if it is, I'm okay with that because I think there's a better quality of life that we can all enjoy. And it's the client that designs that life, not me.
Thank you, Gary. That's really helpful. And what you've done is open the door a little bit there to look at those sort of, because sex, porn, love, we put little slashes between them, but they're very big and different topics. And I think the first one you opened the door on, I'd like to talk about. So porn, you talked about, nudie mags, and everything you said, I felt it straight there. I mean, to learn everything I knew about sex and women came from porn. Came from nudie mags.
Yes, and porn.
80s and 90s. There was no, I was at boarding school. There was nothing coming from home, and it's all very stiff upper lip there anyway. Got a bit better in my teens, but still making a real kind of mess of it as I went. And until I stopped watching any kind of porn or consuming any kind of porn about 3 years ago, as a very giving up an addiction, if you like, I noticed that my porn got progressively harder and harder and harder over the years. No pun intended. It just to the point at which one day you look at it and you go, "Fucking hell, how did I get here?" And it was all just. It needed for me. I needed to feel like I was doing something wrong to kind of get off on it. And I think, could you speak to the porn side of addiction? And that would be very helpful.
No, and let me begin for our listeners to hear this, Chris, which is really important. Porn is not about porn. The sex that you're chasing and trying to get more and consume as much, it's not about sex, what you're doing. The love behaviors that you're doing, it ain't about love as such. What's happening is those things called porn and sex, Chris, I call the equivalent of the drug taker's needle. The use of porn and sex is the needle to get the chemicals into your body. Whereas with drugs, with alcohol, you're bringing in the chemicals into your body. With porn and sex, it's the self-manufactured chemicals, which are so potent. And I have to just say that they are so potent. That's why many people, particularly the female partners, don't necessarily all believe there's such a thing as a porn addiction. It's just men behaving badly. Well, I beg to differ a bit, because what happened back there, it was initially back in childhood, 10, 11, 12, I came across my dad's, and he never knew, and I kept going back and I'm not hurting anybody. And then you develop and you add masturbation to it, and then the brain gets used to that, and it says, ooh, there's a bit more over there. And then 2 years on, you can't believe you're viewing the stuff which you looked at and said, no, that's too. But what you've done over the years is you've crossed boundaries. You've taken risks. And whilst you were doing the behaviors and your parents in childhood were just in the other room or downstairs, the body was pumping this stuff and your arousal template, your developing sexuality was being shaped, and in it was taking risks and crossing boundaries. And so constantly now, as that now develops and you're getting that high from the dopamine, the oxytocin, you're escaping from your problems. So a number of things are being set up, which is when I feel negative and I do this behavior, feeling, in fact, we started out with behavior, a negative feeling, and then in the middle was thinking, what should I do? Because I don't like the way I'm feeling. Bullying, being compared to another sibling, boarding school, what are parents arguing, going through whatever the thing is that made me feel. My brain then remembered this thing I came across viewing these images, or even alcohol, or my PlayStation, or whatever the compulsive thing is that you learn to do. And the brain said, let's go and do that. So when I feel, I think about what to do and I do that. Over time, feel, do no longer needs a brain intervention. It just, when I feel, this is what I do. Feel, do. So they've now got paired up. I don't have to think. So you created a neural pathway. Think about it like a hamster wheel. When I feel, this is what I do. And that's got set up. But all along, it looked like you were doing porn and sexual things, but actually, it was a way of getting the chemicals into your body. And then over time of the hamster wheel, the physiology of the body got changed to become use dependent on some really potent chemicals in childhood, often during those early developing years where you've already got these puberty hormones shooting through your body, and then you're going to add these extra really potent ones, and they now set up the template for your sexuality to a great extent. And constantly you want a new high, or actually it's not always new, it's to maintain the same high. But the drug taker and the type of drug they were taking 5 years ago is rarely the same type and level that they're taking 5 years later. It's the same with porn, except it's more about the novelty, the newness, the chase that creates the pump. And so you find yourself moving into, I never use the word harder stuff. I think we can get lost in this soft porn, hard porn. So it's not a term I always use, and I know you corrected and used, etc. But it's about whatever my brain says that's novel. Let's go through that gateway, and once you've opened that gateway, even if it's got a ooh, and yet somehow a year later you find yourself absolutely in there, and constantly the brain's looking for more, because what it's trying to do is maintain the high. Yeah. So the porn is a way of managing your emotions. It's not the porn, it's the chemical fix. It's the way of managing. So the boarding school and the unconscious trauma and the stuff that's happened back there, it's not you who choose the compulsive behavior like you thought. It's not you. It's your brain that chooses it. So another friend of Chris's could say, hey, Chris, I came across this bottle in my dad's living room. I think it's called whiskey. Taste this, Chris. It makes my tummy warm, doesn't it? Isn't it nice? Chris tastes it and, that's disgusting. It tastes like perfume. Come on, let's go and play football. And then the next day, Chris says, look what I found, these magazines. And, hey, friend. And the friend looks at it and says, oh, that's fun. Next day, Chris says, shall we look at them again? The friend says, nah, Chris, that's boring. Let's go and play football. Why did one gravitate to alcohol and another one porn or whatever? It's not you. It's not me. It's not us that chooses. It's the brain that chooses the compulsive behavior that's right for it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gary. That's so helpful. Yeah, very much on a personal level now, I'm kind of connecting to this, that with the number of addictions that I had over the years, I spoke to someone else about this the other day, and what I said was I started stacking addictions. So,
Yeah,
with the porn side of things and masturbation, growing up in sort of an institution, very repressed sexual sort of institution, single sex for a while, then mixed gender, etc. As you say, that the start of porn and masturbation is risky. You have to do it so, because if anyone notices,
oh
you
my
get
goodness,
you get the shit beaten out of you, or you get shamed in front of everyone, etc. So
yeah,
yeah, you say the heart starts going, and then for me, then went smoking, then went drinking, then went drugs, and
yeah,
then I would be stacking those. So on an evening, I might be gambling, smoking, drinking,
yeah,
eating to excess, then
yeah,
looking for a strip club,
yeah,
then so there's just more and more and more, and in the end there is sort of the hungry ghosts, as Gabor Mate talks about it with
yeah,
addiction. It doesn't
yeah,
matter how much you stack, you can't get there. You can't
absolutely.
get there anymore.
And the point is, Tris, yeah, that's so great the point that you just made, which is there's always pretty much, folks, a co-addiction waiting in the wings. And that's why I say porn isn't about porn. Sex isn't about sex. Because if you get rid of the porn and the sex through a 12 steps recovery program, through some other recovery program, there's one waiting in the wings to take its place, because what it's trying to do is manage your emotions and to self-soothe. So get rid of one, and through the back door will come another. So in the recovery program, my recovery program, the Kairos recovery program, I'm always watching what's going to come through the back door. So I want to know what those co-addictions are. Was it my game console when I was 10, 11 and I played for hours, etc.? What's going to come through the back? Because it's all about giving you the chemical high. Yeah. I call this, Chris, my mathematical formula, which is the word shame plus narcissism equals porn addiction, sex addiction. Shame plus narcissism equals porn stroke sex addiction. So in any recovery program, remember, there's two parts to a recovery for me. You got to deal with the childhood events. Even the child who says I had a perfect upbringing. I'm not trying to find dirt or problems. I often use the situation of the curate, the minister, with the child living in the manse and a beautiful family, etc. But every time the telephone rings, the 6-year-old learned that dad's got to stop running cars along the ground with him, or playing football outside, or playing with him, because the phone equals a parishioner needs my dad. And of course, that's dad's job. So dad's going to go. And what's the problem there? But I had a lovely upbringing, Gary. But it's when I get older and now I'm having real issues in my relationship with my partner. And if you think back about the Action Man or the doll or the equivalent of whatever the child down the road took and didn't give it back, why am I in marital conflict? Because whenever she uses my toothpaste or toothbrush or my coffee cup and doesn't put it back, I get so angry. What's that got to do with my toy that was taken by the child? I don't mind her using it or him using it as long as he puts it back, therapist. Gosh, even that's a bit over the top for me. What's going on? It's nothing about the coffee cup or the toothbrush or the tooth. It's something back there that happened that. So we're never trying to find some dirt, really. It's just about the family growing up. Even the most beautiful family, it's the way your brain interpreted your parents' way of trying to be the best that they could do, but somehow your brain received some form of hurt, pain, whatever it may be. And so trying to find that is really, those things are really important, because it gives you clues to how the brain then goes on to set up a self-soothing So deal with the past through, I do history taking. This is 1 to 5. And then the rest is the form that you use, whether it's somatic, EMDR, whatever it may be, then to deal with the trauma that got set up. Only later on do you look at some recovery program, really, to deal with the past first. Deal with the past first. Otherwise, you're just trying so hard with white knuckling it. And what I'm doing, Chris, is gripping the sides of the chairs and knuckling. I don't want to do this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. Years of sobriety under my belt now. 12 steps, attendance, really good. And that's a part of my recovery program, so don't hear me mocking it.
No.
But the problem is, you then get some bad news about a relative getting a diagnosis. You now get news about you being made redundant. You now hear about your child not, and now your brain says, come on, let's go and do that thing we used to do back there when we was upset and etc. And it can open it all up again. Well, Gary, that could apply to anyone, couldn't it? Yes, potentially, but if you've gone after the stuff that set it up originally, there's nothing for it to lock back into because you really have resolved it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I really hear that. I think in the coaching work that I do with emotional freedom technique, matrix reimprinting, once you take down on those big T, or they're not big T traumas, but they're a big tree in the sort of forest of, not Gabor Mate's thing is it's not why the addiction, but why the pain. So we just find the pain, if you like, when it started. And sometimes it's strange things. One of my favorite sort of
strangest of things, Chris.
One of the, I in my coaching, I witnessed some really big, awful things that happen to people. But often it's not what happened; it's what you make it mean. And so, one of the examples I use is, family have gone to the beach, and there's a brother and a sister, little girl, little boy. Little girl's a little bit naughty at the beach. So afterwards, the whole family go for ice cream, but she hasn't bought one. Now, in that moment, she's actually had loads of other big T trauma around it, but the pivotal point in her life was, I didn't get the ice cream. Mum and dad don't love me. I'm bad. That's the belief that was made that day. And so everything that came after in that client was pinned on that one story. And once we broke that down, all the trees fell. They all started to make sense. And it's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely fascinating. That's absolutely it. And my similar story, like yours, Chris, would be, and then we were all around the table with all my cousins, and my dad and my mum shouted at me to keep my mouth shut and I was so embarrassed. I went red. And whether it's no ice cream or it's being shouted across, and we would look and laugh at that now, but that was a significant event in that child. It's what his or her brain made of that situation that is really significantly important to address.
Thank you. And so you mentioned the Kairos recovery program that you've set up and run, and you've become very well known in this area. I know your podcasts are very well watched, and so we talked about kind of going backwards to go forwards, if you like, and dealing with the root cause stuff before any kind of 12-step program or recovery program. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about from the Kairos sort of way of doing things that you introduce, that you bring in along the way?
Yeah, when I was trained in porn sex therapy, I would attribute Thaddeus Burchard, I would say, really, in terms of porn sex addiction in this country, 15 years ago when I trained with him. But then I was going on and I was doing the history taking, and it's an extensive history taking of 188 questions over 3 sessions to build a profile of the little person, to understand what happened back there. That's the key question. What happened back there? And as I got the information and I gave the hypothesis, we could then move on to put them on a recovery program. And I realized this is ludicrous, Gary. You've diagnosed and found what the little t or big T trauma event is, but you're not working with it. And so I say to people, so many recovery programs still not really looking at it from a open quote. I have to keep saying that because you're with me, Chris. You know, it doesn't need to be this big trauma event. It could be denied ice cream with the rest of the children. So the little T thing. But it's really important to address those things first. And so I recognize that there's still so many not really addressing the trauma and just putting people on a 12 steps recovery program, or their own recovery program. And I realized I was doing that for a period, and I said, this is ludicrous. This is absolutely ludicrous. I've diagnosed what happened, why the brain started self-soothing, but I'm not working with it. And so what I realized really was, people need to be able to access some help. So I will offer diagnostics so as to understand what happened back there. But if folks don't want to do that, there is a recovery program over here that I need it to be accessible by the multitudes across the oceans, across the world. And so I set about creating this video on demand program. By that time, people got used to binging their box sets, etc. You don't binge this course, by the way. It's a one per week, because the reflecting time between listening to each of the video recording and the workbook, the most important part of the work is the reflection. That's where you're going to get insight and understanding based upon the work, the things that I'm offering to you. Yeah. And so I created this online video on demand, pre-recorded with workbook. And if you do want to have some homework review sessions with me, you can. But you can do this recovery program from anywhere in the world at the comfort of your armchair, so to speak. Without a therapist, but you can have input. If you're not disciplined, then you might want to book in homework sessions with me from time to time just to check how you're doing. And there's a sense of feeling there's somebody you're accountable to as well, to keep the momentum going. So that is available. I think it probably is the world's first video on demand program, and it is being used by hundreds and hundreds. So I have the beauty of being able to say it works, because hundreds and hundreds are using it and have used it all over the world. But the vast majority don't know about it. And so, but for the purposes of us folks, I just want people to hear, but porn and sex is only one aspect. Remember, I haven't even got near love addiction. Chris and I having such a lovely time. There's so much on our list we'd love to have talked about. We're going to have to come back. Love addiction. It's not about sex or porn. It's insecure attachment. And yet, because we're human beings, Chris, we were designed to be in relationship with other people. If we doubt it, look at what COVID lockdown did when we couldn't. And the mental health issues are even now still just coming out because of lockdown. And so when insecure attachment stuff gets set up in childhood, we desperately try to, like me, build a force field where I'm just an island on my own, but why can't I have a girlfriend? Why all those other got girlfriends? We were made to be in relationship with other people in whatever form that takes. And so the love addiction is something about perhaps, and I don't want to be too stereotypical, but maybe a lot more females will use this love addiction. It's not really, don't want to get too, it is a lot of males and females, but a lot more females will identify more with the love addiction side because it's making sense as to why they're giving up sex so frequently. And then he will take, or the partner will take, and then they seem to be gone and they feel rejected. So the very thing I wanted to avoid has happened, and the repeat wound again from being rejected, and they're flattened, but eventually they get back up, but they go back to a dating site, and so it's not about sex. It's about trying to find people that will fill a void that's inside of me. I'm going to hold up quite a stark picture, Chris, because it cuts through a lot of my description of insecure attachment. There's a void that gets set up in here, and you're trying to fill it with people, with things, but it never gets filled. And so the love addiction is trying to interact with other people, because when you interact, they give you a sense of being wanted, accepted, and then you perhaps give up sex. But when the relationship ends so quickly, you're hurt again. And it keeps that cyclical pattern keeps happening in the way that you're trying to get others to fill that hole with a sense of feeling love and acceptance and affection. And the boarding school folks will be potentially doing that because of the void created by the separation too soon. And they're trying to fill it with different things. Porn is just one of them. Sex is just one of them. Love addiction is just one of them. But there are lots of other compulsives. So that's really how I guess, I distinguish the Kairos Center, really. It's to say the inner child stuff is really, really crucially important before you go on to a recovery program. Absolutely, a 12 steps is a vital part of a recovery program. Absolutely vital. But before that, you've got to deal with the inner child stuff.
Thank you, Gary. That's really, really nicely put. I think just as we start to bring our time together to a close today, one thing we did touch on was very much whether it's just awareness is increasing, or whether sex, love, porn addiction is on the increase. As a specialist in this area, what's your take on you talked about sort of post-COVID stuff coming out the woodwork. What's your take on how we are at the moment, especially with programs that have been on like adolescence, or any of this stuff that's really captured the kind of zeitgeist of what's going on at the moment?
Chris, porn sex addiction is impacting our 9-year-olds up to 75-year-old. This stuff is being exchanged in the playground, on phones, etc. It is a major problem. During COVID lockdown, porn sex addiction increased exponentially. It is at pandemic levels. It's a serious, serious problem. And the behaviors get passed on to the next generation, the children. We know that. It absolutely does. It is at pandemic levels, but it isn't after dinner conversation stuff that you can just talk about very openly. So shame, remember that mathematical formula, shame plus narcissism equals porn sex addiction. So shame means hide, hidden. Don't share, don't attend 12 steps, don't share with after dinner with anyone. Keep it hidden. And so the thing proliferates because you've got to stay in hiding because people will judge me. And then the narcissism element is, I'm not saying my client's a narcissist and NPD, narcissistic person. No, what I'm saying is they will have traits that come out of narcissism, because narcissistic behaviors mean me, I, me, myself, I. And it's not always visible because it looks as if I'm doing for others, but what they're missing is, but when I do for others, it's always conditional on something coming back for me. And also the hiddenness of the behaviors, because others will judge me, means I'm in a closed room, and when I'm doing the material, I'm not thinking about the person on the other side of that porn stuff that they're doing. I don't think about their life and how they came to be doing what they're doing. They're there to service me and I, and more me and more I. And so there's something about recognizing we all need a helping hand at times in life. And it's not a weakness to hold our hands up and say, I need help. I did not want to go into therapy. Absolutely. And anyway, I'm a black man. and I don't need this. And I absolutely needed the help. So I say, it's on the increase. significantly so. Ease of access, the age range 9 to 75 years. Believe me, Fred is age 10 and he's never kissed a girl and he's on the sex offenders register. What? Yes, absolutely. And never kissed a girl. There's a problem out there. There is a big problem out there. And most parents have no idea of what their kids are doing in their room on their mobile phones. So it is at pandemic levels, Chris. It really
Yeah,
is.
thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. That's my instinct. Just, I've got teenage daughters. From what I see from the group chats, thankfully they've managed to get through so far without a smartphone. We're a part of smartphone free childhood, and that's been helpful in many ways, keeping some of it at bay. But it's a difficult subject. I think for me that the porn addiction changed. A couple of things really changed the game for me, which was understanding energetically as well that porn is made by the shadow for the shadow. It's made by the shadowy parts of us for the shadowy parts of us, if you like, to get the heart going. And that there isn't, people say there's soft, there's hard, there's sort of female friendly, or there's couples. Ultimately, it's from the shadow for the shadow. And I think that really struck home for me, that it needed for me to be a zero tolerance to it, so none at all. And the second thing was that energetically as well, that if you're masturbating and watching pornography, you are energetically in many ways performing a rape and a non-consensual sort of sex act with the people who are performing in the scene. And whether people believe that or not, say, well, they chose to do it, etc. If you know anything about how porn is made and the kind of people that get pulled into it, etc., when that hit me, I suddenly realized that between those two big things, I couldn't do it anymore. It had to stop.
Absolutely.
What came after that was, no porn meant no masturbation, meant my sex life drastically improved, with my partner, and meant so many other things came out of it as well. Yep. So, there's a journey.
There's so much on the other side of sobriety. I use the term sobriety, that I don't even try and tell my clients. They just have what do you mean? But partway through the program, they start to tell me the things that they're experiencing. I say, yep, there's so much on the other side of sobriety, and and there's so much more to come. So much more to come.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, lovely. Yeah. As we wrap up then, Gary, for anyone who's interested in your work, wants to learn a bit more, wants to work with you, etc., where should they go to find your work?
Yeah, there's this other Kairos Centre, I understand, in London that does other things. So the website is www.kairos, Kairos-center.com. Kairos-center.com. That's where I am. My podcast is the Sex, Porn and Love Addiction podcast. The Sex, Porn and Love Addiction podcast. I think it's probably up at 50-something thousand downloads in a short period of time.
Yeah, we'll make sure those links are in the show notes today so that people can find them easily. But as we bring things to a close, Gary, it could go for hours on this. It's a great and interesting topic. But I just wanted to honour your work, your journey, the time you've given today to help to give people a bit of an overview, and some of the really sort of heartfelt points that you've pulled out here. Very much the sort of humanity behind, addiction and the reasons we seek coping mechanisms, survival strategies, self-soothing, etc. It's been really enlightening. So thank you so much for your work, for your time today.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I guess my key thing is, people, please don't pigeonhole me in sex and porn. That's just so happens the area that I'm more skilled in. But what I want you to recognize is you probably have some coping strategies that you've been using for managing the stuff that happened to you back there. I'd love, and others in the practitioners directory would love to help you to better understand you. Because if you can better understand you, now you can go after the stuff. But what you can't see, you have no hope of changing. So my work really is move as much from the unconscious into the conscious, into the visible, because what you can now see in the visible, we've used a highlighter pen, and now, Chris, can you see that now? Now I can see it. I now get a chance to go after it. But when I couldn't see it, I just kept self-soothing and trying to be the best that I could do with the impediments of life because I didn't understand what was going on. So my flavor of therapy is Gary would love to help move as much from the unconscious, from the unseen, from the invisible, into the conscious, into the visible, into the seen. And then we'd go after it with a form of whichever is right, such as EMDR is the one that I tend to use.
Yeah. Gary, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to thank everybody for listening or watching as well. It's been the Seen and Heard podcast, a conversational series. We've been with the wonderful Gary McFarlane. I'm Chris Brach. Wishing you a fabulous day. If you want to find out more, check out the show notes. Thank you very much for watching
Thank you
or listening.
so much, Chris. And
Goodbye,
best
Gary.
wishes